do this. All right, I have started the recording. Welcome everybody to the weekly Wednesday training. And as you heard me mention, it's been kind of a crazy day. So I'm just gonna use this opportunity for all of us to just take a minute and arrive here. Thank you for investing in yourself, for taking the time to continue to expand what you are learning about, how you're leading yourself and others, and the things that you are learning. It is a great thing that you're doing. And if you just take a minute and slow your breath and thank yourself for this investment of time in yourself, it goes a long way towards your gratitude practice when we are thanking ourselves. So thanks for joining. Congratulations on doing that and welcome. Today we are talking about fueling your leadership, and I am specifically talking about ingesting. So I'm talking about what you do eat, what you do drink, what other things that you take in terms of supplements, and how and why that's actually critical to your leadership. So I am not a nutritionist. I'm not going to sit here and advocate what your plate should look like and all of that. What I want us all to think about is what is critical for us in terms of being a leader. And that's in terms of being a leader in our personal lives and in our professional lives. What is important? And let's just start brainstorming. When you think about health and wellness, what do you think is important? One thing I'm going to put out there, and then I just want to start to open the floor, and I want us to be, just thinking through this. I think it's incredibly important to have relatively consistent energy. And that doesn't mean that it's not okay to be tired. That doesn't mean that you have to always be a ball of energy and all hyped up at all. Sometimes that's actually not helpful to a situation, right? But you don't want to be experiencing, in terms of energy, these significant peaks and then huge drops. That's not healthy and helpful, and it doesn't help us sustain ourselves. So for me as a leader, I know that consistent energy is important. And I'm specifically talking about consistent energy that comes from having sort of a complete meal on a regular interval. So I'm not getting hangry, right? So I'm not experiencing a significant drop in blood sugar that then leads me to eat, a bag of Oreos, where all of a sudden then I've got a ton of energy. I'm talking about ingesting food in a way that really supports me. And so I wanted to put that out there as one example, because for me, consistent energy is important for me to be a leader. And so with that, I'd love to open the floor and just see, thinking about what we take in to our bodies, what you all think is important in attributes to be a leader.
Sarah, I was going to say it's important to get nutrients like from fruits and vegetables, and a balanced meal as well, with fiber, all the things you learn in nutrition class.
Right, balanced meal, fruit, vegetables, fiber, yeah. And really that's important, because if we're not taking care of our bodies, we might be able to sustain short term, but chances are we're going to get sick some way or another, right? We'll have some sort of vitamin deficiency. We might have some sort of digestive issue. There's a lot that could potentially happen when we're not properly fueling our bodies, right? What else? Has anybody ever had too much coffee?
Yes.
Yeah. What are your signs, to yourself that you've had too much coffee? What helps you to know that?
I think I have the typical signs, like getting a little jittery, or sometimes some type of coffee. If I drink too much, I get like heartburn from it. Yeah. Not being able to sleep properly, or being irritable.
Yep. If we dose with caffeine too late in the day, right? For some people, they know exactly when they need to cut off. Others forget. And it becomes this vicious cycle, right? Where you have a cup of coffee in the afternoon, so you can't go to sleep. So you don't sleep as much as you need to. So you need a cup of coffee in the afternoon, and it keeps going like that, right?
And the other thing that I was going to bring up is proper hydration. Like drinking too much coffee, which goes with drinking too much coffee. Coffee is dehydrating. So drinking too much coffee and not enough water also can lead to dehydration, which then can lead to headaches, or, it's different in different people, but, it's pretty common to get headaches or, muscle spasms or, things like that.
Very much so. And I think that you bring up an important point by saying it's different for different people, because this is an exercise in awareness and attention, right? For some people, it's obvious. Oh, I've had too much coffee. I have a headache starting. Let me switch to water. Other people just sort of muscle through, right? And that's not a character flaw per se, but the more that we bring our attention to why might I have a headache? And maybe it's better for me to switch to water than to automatically just dose with Advil. Or maybe I need to do both. But maybe if you actually feel a headache coming on and you use Excedrin, which also has more caffeine in it, you're just going to exacerbate it. It's really important for us to be thinking about why we might be feeling a certain way. So we do, there are some general physiological things that happen, but we experience things differently.
And to go back to the balanced meals, I find that too much coffee affects me a lot more if I hadn't eaten properly.
Yes. Yeah.
And coffee is not a substitute for food.
No, coffee is not a substitute for food,
as it turns out.
And ideally, according to my nutritionist, we should actually have coffee with food because it slows the absorption of the caffeine. So, yeah.
Same thing for alcohol.
Same thing for alcohol. And
along the same lines, drinking alcohol along with food slows the release of alcohol in blood, which decreases the effect of that alcohol can have on our brains.
Yeah. And that I'm just going to put out there. That is something that I'm happy to discuss in this forum, but I really think almost alcohol, that is, I think that almost deserves its own discussion about ingestion and why we might turn to it, why we might use it, whether or not it's actually okay. It's socially okay. And at the same point, I'll put forward that I don't think it's okay personally. And I actually quit drinking over 15 months ago. And that was a decision that I'll tell you, took me a long time to get to because it was a habit. I knew it was no longer serving me. I didn't have any like dramatic rock bottom story or anything, but I knew it wasn't serving me. You would even say to my husband occasionally, like, I just don't want a glass of wine tonight. I'm definitely not having wine anymore with dinner or whatever. And then 2 days later, I'd have a glass of wine because I was used to doing it. And April 9th, 2020, a month into the pandemic, right? I was like, that's it, I'm done. And my husband was like, does that mean I can't have one? And I'm like, no, you can. Like, I've had it. Like, I would wake like even with a glass, of wine, with dinner, I would wake in the middle of the night and be awake and it would just feel crappy. And I just knew it wasn't serving me. And so just to elaborate a little bit on my experience, and then we can get back to other nutrition. Like I have feelings now that I didn't have 15 months ago. Like the full spectrum of feelings is not available to you when you numb. It's amazing and it's raw and it sucks on some days. And the hardest part for me was those first 2 weeks, like getting out of the habit. Like, it's after work. Like we normally pour a glass of wine while we're cooking dinner. We're definitely not going anywhere because it's COVID and everybody's scared and we're still figuring stuff out. And once I got through that, honestly, not drinking was not an issue. But I will tell you, like the journey that I have been on myself since I stopped has been amazing and eye-opening and incredible. So that's, and I the more I read about it, the more I think that alcohol may go the way of tobacco in the future in terms of it's socially acceptable and everybody does it now. And really it's a neurotoxin. And let's talk about what it actually does and doesn't do for us. So there's my side note on alcohol. Anybody else want to talk about alcohol for a few minutes?
I mean, I could add that with COVID, I think that I was probably 90 days into COVID and I realized that I had had a glass of wine every night and that did not fit with what I wanted to do. I think it was just like, I'm not going anywhere. So yeah, I'm like, let's make a conscious decision here to not drink every day.
Yeah.
Just because I don't, and I didn't drink to excess. I was like, I don't want that. I don't want to do that every night.
Yeah.
But you need to think about it because otherwise it's just easy.
It is. It's really easy.
There's an open bottle of wine on the counter. Might as well use it. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. If you wait too long, it's no good, right? Yeah.
That's why you get the box.
The box.
In this case, you have a little tiny bit.
Yeah. You know what else helps is I also did wine tastings on COVID during COVID, and it was suggested to put them in the fridge so that they maintain longer. But actually what helps too is then it's not on the counter, so I don't see it.
Right.
Then I know what it is if I want it, but I don't automatically think like, oh, it's on the counter. This must be my getting ready to make dinner wine.
Right.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I can keep a box of wine for like over a month because I don't think about it. It's not like I need it daily. It's just, a little splash after dinner and then that's it. It's not even a full glass,
Oh, and I also started using smaller glasses.
Yeah, I drink more like an aperitif instead of a glass of wine.
Yeah, I treat wine and beer more like I treat desserts, which is like it's a once in a while treat. And it's just like sort of like I plan for it and that's it. But my brain is actually really, really good, or I've learned to listen to my body maybe over the years. And I know exactly where to stop. Like the moment I slightly feel something changing in the way my head feels, that I immediately stop. And that has proven to be really, really, consistent. So my body is really, really good at telling me that's enough.
Or you're really, really good, as you said, at listening, right? You are really, really good at listening. I would argue that our bodies are constantly telling us what we need. And we are not always as in tune with them to get what we need, to acknowledge what we need. And we're not always listening at the same level. And there is where having a mindfulness practice feeds into being more present and listening to our bodies more about what we need. An analogy there could be made to, anybody that tends to stress eat, right? Or to emotionally eat. Are you actually physiologically hungry? Like, are you hungry at a cellular level? Or are you hungry at an emotional level? In which case, an emotional level will most likely not be filled through food, right? An emotional hunger requires an additional way of managing it.
So true. So true. That part I haven't learned well yet.
It's all a practice. I think people that I know have had years of practicing this, and yet still we at times forget to listen. So before I jump ahead to what happens when we forget to listen, or what happens when we realize we are not listening, I want to just say or ask if there are any other attributes of leadership that you think can be impacted by what we ingest, because that's really what we're talking about here. How to be a more incredible leader, how to be more connected to ourselves. And what do you think might be impacted in terms of our leadership by what we ingest?
So I think like proper fueling and like being, having our brain be really responsive and in good shape helps with like attention and focusing and, a set of things like the patience to, to listen to other people and kind of help them through and things like that. I feel like, just a silly example, like I don't eat many carbs at lunch because I feel like I get really tired and sleepy. And when I'm like that and I have the afternoon, I find myself being more irritable. So if I have to like get on the meeting with somebody and try to solve some problems, I feel like I'm less patient and less responsive than, for example, in the morning when, I have a much lighter breakfast that just gives me some fuel, but it's nothing that, you know, gets very heavy and my body's busy, you know, digesting, and my brain is like, I am having difficulties here. So that's what I've noticed. So I've changed kind of like my strategy around lunch to keep my body awake and not getting that slump in, you know, in the early afternoon. So that I felt like it would impact or it used to impact sometimes the way I could deal with my direct reports or my colleagues, just because my body was like sluggish and it, you know, and my brain was not like ready to take on that.
I mean, I think it impacts like how much you can pay attention.
Very much so. Yeah.
Yeah, because if you eat the wrong thing, then you get tired. Or like for me, sometimes I have meetings that go like 10 to 2 and I miss lunch completely, or I'm running out and I'm putting something, you know, that's already pre-made and super salty on my plate because I don't have time to go out and like make a lunch, you know. So it's not that I don't know what to eat. It's more like sometimes it's just you're time impaired and you're just grabbing whatever you can get in that small amount of time. And, I mean, for me, that's been my biggest issue. I haven't noticed like any like behavioral impact on nutrition, but like for me, like time is the biggest issue. When calendars get full, then you can't make a healthy choice as easily.
You can't make a healthy choice in the moment.
Yeah.
Right. And so that does feed into some planning. And it is not, I mean, this is the chick that's been in meetings since 6 a.m., right? It is not always possible in your day that you're like, oh no, I have lunch planned for that half an hour, you know. Hopefully we can do that for most of our days and block that time out. But there are days where it just can't happen, right? There are days where we're on the run. So I'll give you an example of what I did today, because it's now 12:20 and I literally have been in a meeting since 6 a.m. And 6 a.m. is not a morning time that I start meetings normally. This is an exceptional situation. I went into a 4-hour meeting at 6 a.m. because we had to cover a lot to kick off a project, and so be it. And then right after that, I had a 2-hour meeting before I came into this. So, you know, I knew this was coming up. We do talk about calendar blocking, you know, in other trainings, and my day was definitely calendar blocked, and there was nothing, you know, in terms of like, I'm going to stretch or I'm going to eat. Luckily in the 4-hour meeting, like we had some breaks, right? But I had my meals packed in the fridge, basically breakfast and lunch. And I did that yesterday because I knew otherwise I'd be wandering over to like our little pantry closet that's down here and like grabbing a bag of chips, because I know how I behave in these things, right? And so in order to prevent eating crap, in order to prevent the plummeting of my blood sugar, I made sure I had, you know, proportioned out enough vegetables and protein and fat to make a reasonable breakfast and a reasonable lunch so that I could come in here with a steady level of energy, right? And it does require some advanced planning. And there's still going to be the days where you don't think it's going to be crazy and all hell breaks loose and it's crazy and you grab what you can. But for the days where you know it's going to be chaotic, or you know it's going to be a situation where you can't step away and get yourself something healthy, try and be prepared. Another thing that's really important for us to think about is how we eat, right? I come from years, decades of like having my lunch right here, right? And today in the meetings that I had to do that. And I sat here and looked at my food, tried to smell my food, like when, you know, off video, right? I wasn't trying to be all creepy, but I made an intentional effort to really be present with my food, even though I had to be in a meeting. Is that a day-to-day practice that I want to engage in, you know, being intentional while also doing business? No, I am trying to, and most days I work to get away both, you know, for breakfast and for lunch, so that I am being very present with what we eat. There are clients that I have that, you know, that have said, I eat lunch at my desk all the time, and half the time I don't remember what I ate. I'm sure we can understand that experience, right? And so if you don't remember what you eat, or if you are eating without really thinking about what the food tastes like, you're not enjoying it to the same degree, you're probably not cueing in to your body's signals that it's full. You might not, more than likely, you might not be digesting because you're not in the rest and digest parasympathetic state that we should be in when we eat. Even just getting my head around that some days is really hard. Like knowing that I am in this very sympathetic response, like I'm in my work mode, I'm going, but I now need to change my mindset and sit here and breathe and be present and like try and bring my body into a more activated parasympathetic state. It can be really hard, but it's really important when we are looking long-term at our digestive health, long-term about how our body is going to absorb vitamins and nutrients and what it does to keep us going, right? The idea here is really to maximize how effective we are as leaders. And that includes thinking about how we fuel. Stacey, you've been really quiet today. I'm going to call on you because I love your orange background. I love the wall color.
Yeah, the orange was a choice my girls picked out when they were little.
I like it. It's bright and cheerful. What are you thinking about what we've been talking about so far?
Yeah, I've been thinking about how like I tend to not eat because I'm so busy, and I'm thinking, I'm okay, I can just keep going. But I think that if I had the fuel in me, I would be even more effective and more productive and able to process. I get to the point where at 2 o'clock, I'm like, I have to stop and eat.
Mm-hmm.
So I shouldn't do that to myself. All the things that you're saying are really resonating with me.
Yeah. How do you think you might start to think about doing things differently? Like what might you build into your calendar, or how might you structure your day so that in general, it doesn't become 2 o'clock and you're like, oh, I have to stop and eat.
Right. Like when I get up, I don't know about anybody else. Like I wonder when you get up, like, are you hungry? Like that would be like the first thing that would be, I have time, I'm up, maybe I should just have breakfast even though I'm not really hungry. So maybe just starting out with something small to be that first fuel. And then, you know, they say, I've heard, and we haven't talked about it on this call, but I've heard that eating small meals is good for you. So maybe in 2 hours, I should put something on my calendar that says, take a break, have something to eat, just to get in the routine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And to the small meal question, like this is my philosophy. So take it or leave it happily. Like small meals might be best for you. For other people, it might be more of a, I break for lunch and I get an hour then, or I get a half an hour minimum. Ideally, I get an hour where I do get a mental break and I get to slowly eat. It is up to everyone, you know, and everybody I think needs to figure out what works best for them. Maybe eating 2 hours makes sense for some people. Maybe it doesn't for others. In the same way that some people adore keto and like live their best life through it. And I'm like, no, you know, everybody has to figure out what's best for them. So yeah, if you think small meals might be a thing that you want to try, consider it. And it might be something that's easier to build in because you're not sitting with like a plate of food and like we're trying to shovel it in, you know, in feeling really busy. So think about what you want to try and then try it and give yourself some time to really evaluate if it's working, right? So if you're going to try small meals, don't try it for, you know, 4 days and then be like, unless you absolutely hate it, right? Maybe give yourself like 3 months, like what does my energy level look like, and keep tabs on it. Maybe, you know, not tracking it necessarily, but like, how am I feeling throughout the day? Is this serving me or do I need to tweak it? Thanks for that feedback. And yeah, I've definitely lived the life too, where it's all of a sudden it's 2 o'clock and I'm going to go eat 4 bagels with cream cheese because that's what's in the freezer and the fridge and I'm starving. Anyone else have any thoughts on this? Anybody want to think about changes you want to make and talk about what you might do to create those changes? Like I love the calendar reminder that you put on, Stacey, that idea.
Yeah, I mean, I already do calendar block my lunch out, and most days I can take it. My issue sometimes is just like, I don't have the energy to work all day, then go to the gym, then go to the grocery store. And by the time I realize I'm like out of vegetables, it's several days before I go back and like restock. So then sodium starts to become an issue because I'm like, well, this can of soup is fine, or this thing in my freezer is fine, but it's not fine because there's so much extra sodium in those kinds of things, and that makes you feel terrible.
All right, so let's explore that a little. So the can of soup might not be fine, right? Or it might be fine once in a while.
Once in a while, not for like regularity.
Right. Are there things that you could keep, as almost stocked pantry items that, are frozen?
Yeah. No, I do. I mean, I do. What the issue is that they're like pop them in the oven and they're not good for you.
Okay. So are there other things that you might be able to keep that are better for you?
I don't know.
Probably. Really? Like frozen spinach, plain, like frozen broccoli, plain? What do you think about that?
Eating it plain?
No, but having it in your freezer plain, rather than like in that pot pie from Marie Callender,
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, definitely, I keep frozen vegetables, but it doesn't make a meal.
No, it doesn't make a meal. No, that's true. That being said, I think that there are lots of things that we can keep on hand, from frozen healthy meats, if you are an omnivore, to other protein sources, right? And thus you can make a meal out of not fresh stuff. Does that make sense? Like, I'm 45 minutes from a grocery store that has organic produce.
I know.
And I'm not running out for it just on a whim, right? And so I need to keep frozen vegetables. And no, I don't eat the frozen plain spinach, but I'll cook it, right? And then add it into something, or even just top it with a fat that makes it a lot more enjoyable, right? So I think that there are ways we can look at what we stock in our food cabinets differently as well.
Or even like something that I do is I'll make like a healthy pot of soup and I'll make extra and then just put it in frozen containers and freeze it. So then all I have to do is heat it up. Like, so stuff made from scratch that doesn't have a bunch of sodium and a bunch of, that you can have frozen and just warm it up or whatever.
Yeah. Yep. I know that's a great point. Yeah.
Sarah, my daughter asked if we could keep a bag of broccoli in the fridge. So having that and hummus is a really good snack. I'm trying to keep healthier things handy like that.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. Yep. Even sometimes, I don't know about you, but we tend to collect in the kitchen as we're cooking dinner, and, we're already hungry very often. And it can be really hard not to pull out cheese and crackers or a bag of chips all the time. And yet we don't want to. So in that instance, like broccoli and hummus, or cut carrots and hummus, I've been sort of shocked at, or in a pleasant way, shocked at what Target has started carrying in terms of their prepped vegetables that are organic, and their dips that are, there's hummus, and then there's all the almond ones, and, just different ways of eating that could lead to more sustained energy, could lead to better digestion, could lead to, eating in general in more healthy ways.
And I'm sure everybody has experienced this. I've realized that unless I make it a point of not having certain things in the house, there is just, at least for me, there is just no way to resist. Like, if something is, it helps, like, it was discussed earlier, not to have it like right in front of you. That helps for sure. But even if it's sitting in the pantry, there is always that moment in the day where I'm just wondering, right? Probably emotional eating, but I'm just like opening the cupboard and it's like, and if it's there, I mean, it's so hard. So I've gotten to the point where it's like, if I really don't want to eat this stuff, I'm just not gonna buy it. There is no hiding it away. It's just doesn't need to be there. And I've just had to be a lot more strict with myself when I go to the grocery store, and just make it a point not to buy something, and just kind of prevent that in the first place.
Yeah, I'll tell you, I have a disturbingly accurate recollection of where every piece of food is in our home. I have no idea. Like my husband will be like, "Where's that?" And I'm like, "It's the third can behind the coconut milk." Like
I'm like you. Yeah, so you're not alone.
And so, you know, but at the same time, I've got young kids, and so their snacks could become fair play. And I deliberately try to get them snacks that they want, because when kids are younger, we could have a whole nother discussion on kids on sugar. But my philosophy is they get a little bit of sugar once in a while, and that's fine, right? That's my philosophy. So, for example, if they're like, "We want ice cream, we want sherbet," I'm like, "How about sherbet?" Because I will never touch the sherbet, right? Whereas I will touch the ice cream. And obviously they could still choose the ice cream, but I try and lead them towards things that I know even in my like most craving of sugar, I would not enjoy sherbet, right? So there's an example of how, you know, you try and satisfy your family and also keep things that you would really gravitate towards away from the house. Yeah. Oh, you're on mute.
A good trick. I've tried that before. There are some things that I wouldn't eat, but my kids enjoy, and they serve the purpose of giving them a treat. Now I'm like, okay, good. I can do that instead of buying something that I would eat along with them. If it's, you know, it's the time.
Yeah.
You know, my husband has now caught on, but he loves lemon things and I just don't care about them. But like chocolate, I really care about a lot. And he's not even a big fan. And so I always, like, we were at the store, and now that he knows my trick, he's like, I'm like, "Oh, look, they have this lemon cake." And he's like, "Well, let's not get that. Let's get, you know, this other one." And so I sold him on strawberry, which I honestly feel the same way about as lemon. So I'm like, "Hey, let's get the strawberry cake. That sounds great."
Yeah. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't enjoy a little indulgence and have that. And maybe we do that when we go out. Maybe we do that like, you know what, I really want ice cream today. And, you know, I haven't had that type of food recently. So why don't we all go out as a family and grab ice cream cones, you know, and then eating it slowly and enjoying it. And there really should be no guilt associated with food. We're nourishing ourselves, right? And even food like ice cream or, you know, a cake, that's just pleasurable. The more that we can actually slow down and maximize getting pleasure from that, the less chance we have, truthfully, of overeating it, of you know, of binge eating it just to numb, honestly.
Yeah. And if I ask myself at the end of dinner if I'm really hungry or if I just want ice cream, I am never hungry after dinner. Never am I like, wow, I need more nutrients. Where is that chocolate cake? It really is. That's why I just think I don't need that.
Yeah.
I can eat it, but I don't need it.
Right. And asking yourself that question moves you out of sort of that reactionary, you know, movement, and you're engaging your prefrontal cortex. You're thinking, you're pausing. I mean, there's all that data out there that it takes us 20 minutes to even know we're full, right? So maybe if you, after dinner, you're like, am I really hungry? Or do I just want that ice cream? No, I'm really hungry. Okay, well, how about I give myself 10, 15 minutes and then I get the ice cream if I'm really still hungry? You know, even just doing that, these are ways that we can be engaging with ourselves and being more mindful and fueling our bodies in a more authentic and informed way.
No, and I often after I eat feel overfull. But 20 minutes later, I don't feel overfull at the table, because if I was overfull, I wouldn't still eat. But I do, like, after I eat, like, that was too much.
Yeah. So what do you think might help change that?
Paying more attention as I'm eating. Because I think mindless eating can lead to being overfull.
We Americans eat really quickly.
Really quickly in huge plates.
Huge plates and really quickly. Yeah. I am
Also.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
Getting to the meal too hungry. That's what happens to me. If, you know, if I'm just like so hungry, I eat very quickly. And then I feel so uncomfortable because you know, it's just like that rush of like, oh, I need to eat. And then I eat too fast, too much. And then I'm like, okay, now I feel crappy. So yeah, I've tried to avoid that.
Or if you get into a meal and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm so hungry. Like even just acknowledging that, like, okay, my gosh, I feel like I, haven't eaten in days, and I'm American, so that's really not true, right? Like, okay, I'm here now. I'm going to take like my first 2 bites and then pause. Even just having sort of a game plan for yourself. Like I'm so full. I want to shovel it in right away. And okay, let me just slow down and then just go slowly. And really we eat way too fast, and that also impacts how we digest food and how our bodies absorb the nutrients and minerals, or don't really. If we're giving it too much, if we're giving it, it's a system that has homeostasis, and if we're violating that regularly, our bodies are not optimized, and they're not fueling our bodies, they're not fueling our brains in the way that we want to. So we will roll into a meal starving, feeling as though we're starving. Recognize that, slow yourself down a little, if you can avoid it, of course, but sometimes we can't. And you're ravenous. Take that first bite, but put your fork down. That's another thing that we can try and do, is put our utensils down. Like try and eat everything on a plate with a fork and a knife. Then put your utensils down in between bites. Slowing the way that we enjoy and ingest our food and our beverages can actually lead us to be more mindful and more present. If meditation is not your gig, start to be mindful while you eat, right? Practice your meditation through eating. It's a wonderful way to really learn what foods you're enjoying and for how long. It's interesting because I started working with a nutritionist months ago, and so I've learned a lot, but she's like, when you want to eat something that's not as good for you, or even something that you just really love, see how you feel on the 5th bite. Like take 4 slow bites and see if the 5th bite is as enjoyable as the first. It never has been. And it's not something I ever would have thought to think about, but it's really, it's why the small plate restaurants are so popular, because we like this diversity in our food. We like a few bites of a lot of different things. And thinking even of that and assessing what we're getting out of the food, how we're enjoying it or not enjoying it anymore. These are really informative things to learn. And ultimately, what we ingest leads to our long-term health, right? It leads to us being more stable, more strong, more healthy. It helps our immune system, right? On so many levels. And it helps us be better leaders because we're aware of what impact food and beverages have on how we're showing up. I'm in the process of trying to cut out coffee. Just going to put that out there. This is like, I've over months been sort of refining this, and that's something that I'm like back to the alcohol. Like, I feel like coffee's just not serving me any longer. And so, playing around, and there's that Emerson quote about us being our own experiments. And I definitely am feeling that.
Tea is a good choice.
Perhaps it doesn't have the same toothiness for me. Yeah. I'm trying different things, figuring it out. Anybody else have any thoughts on nourishing your leadership, fueling your leadership when you have back-to-back meetings, what you do, how you plan, what you think about this?
One comment that I wanted to make is about something that you said earlier when you were talking about, sometimes it's, giving into our indulgences and having that ice cream or whatever it is and not feeling guilty. Mm-hmm. I think overall is like actually having that mindset that food is nourishing to your body. That the fact of eating is to give your body what it needs to stay healthy and to perform well, right? Just kind of coming at the table with that mindset of like, I'm about to provide my body with something that is good, that, will help me stay healthy, will help me feel good, things like that. Mm-hmm. Just having that kind of thought.
Yeah. Go ahead, Shauna.
I just read an article. I just read an article, I think yesterday, about this girl who lost like 100 pounds or something. And she was saying how, like at first she had like a unhealthy relationship with food, and she was like losing weight for all the wrong reasons, like external factors. But then she said that she talked to this person, and the philosophy was when you have like 3 choices for your meal, right? And then you say, okay, that one is not wise. This one is better, and this one is best. And choosing the better one. So you're not depriving yourself, and you're not like pushing yourself too far, but you're making the better choice. So it's like a baby step, you know what I mean? And that's an interesting way to think too, also, because you don't want to deprive, you know, joy out of your meals. Making a better choice than maybe a different choice that you would have made that wasn't so wise. Those incrementally can lead you to better health.
Very much so. And if you just even think about it in the context of like building habits, if you have regularly been in the habit of choosing the most indulgent choice, you're slowly looking at changing it by this one's not wise, better, best. I'll go with better today. You're slowly building on a habit by making it easier, because you're not going from, you know, potato skins to plain salmon, right? You're going to something in between. And that is more palatable for us, pun intended, right? But it's more palatable for us to make a choice like that when it doesn't seem that extreme. And there's, we could get into the diet, you know, industry and culture. Like, we need to remember that food should be nourishing and enjoyable, right? We should enjoy our time eating. Ideally, it's a time to bond and rest and digest, right? There's a reason the parasympathetic system primarily does the rest and digest activities. We're supposed to be relaxed while we're eating. And so bringing the joy back to it is something that can be scary for a lot of people, because we have been so taught that food is the enemy, right? And there's a lot that's associated with that. And there's a lot of mixed and poor messaging that we get from the diet and beauty industry on that.
Yep.
Yeah. There was some, pardon?
No, I was gonna say media makes everything worse. There's so much misinformation that people get so confused, and it really shouldn't be so complicated.
It should definitely not be so complicated. You know, I'll never forget when like the new food guide came out from the FDA. Like, it just makes you wonder about some of the bureaucracy we have. But there was something that I wanted to share with you, because I came across, it's in a peer-reviewed journal. It's a small study, and it's a small study, but it looks at mindfulness and self-compassion, specifically in generalized anxiety disorder. And basically what these investigators did was they studied people that had balanced anxiety. So if this person had anxiety, they would match it with this person who had pretty much the same level of anxiety. And when they measured participants, and I'm just reading it because I don't want to misspeak, but when they measured participants' anxiety symptoms and the degree that those anxiety symptoms interfered with daily life because of the symptoms that they experienced, participants that tended to not judge their symptoms actually had those symptoms impact their life experience less. So that's not to say that their symptoms were different than those that they had sort of matched in this study, but research participants who were less affected by their symptoms didn't experience lower frequency or severity of symptoms, nor were they more aware of their internal state or the observe factor. No, what this data actually showed was that the participants that were less affected by their symptoms actually were less judgmental about their symptoms. Excuse me, I'm getting all tongue-tied. So they weren't feeling like I shouldn't have that symptom, or that symptom is just derailing me from X, Y, and Z. And I think that level of non-judgment is something that is important for us to think about when we're thinking about food, when we're thinking about nourishing our bodies, when we're thinking about any choice that we're making in our life and how it's fueling us or not. If it's not fueling you, don't beat yourself up about it. but recognize that it's not, observe that it's not, and know that that gives you information that can lead you to make better choices. And you'll be more likely to make better choices if you are non-judgmental with yourself about it. I think that non-judge research, I want to find more of it because I think it's really powerful, and it all also ties back into a mindfulness practice. You know, when you're practicing mindfulness, when you're doing meditation and thoughts are coming to you, you're taught to recognize that's a thought and let go. Like, don't grade yourself for having a thought. Don't, you know, get all negative because thoughts come and go, because thoughts come and go. And when you can look at them in a meditative state, or when you practice that sort of mindfulness, you can just let it go without judging. The same can be said when we do things that don't serve us. And that is, you know, in the compartment of fueling our leadership, and in many other ways, like when we make bad decisions. Sometimes we just make bad decisions. And the more that we can observe that and just know that you don't want to do it in the future and not beat yourself up about it, the more you'll be able to continue to grow. And the more, I would argue, you'd get to enjoy life.